Hello everyone, welcome back to Major HiFi. I'm Luke. This video might upset some people, I'm not sure. Maybe no one will care, that's fine too. Today I wanted to do a video for people who want to get into headphones, hi-fi audio, that kind of stuff. These are the things that I feel like I wish I had known, I guess. There's a lot of information thrown at you when you try to start researching this stuff, a lot of do's and don'ts, a lot of very strong statements, and just a million different factors that you're told to consider that really, are super important. And if you have to do this or this or this if you want to get the right setup and if you want things to sound good. And I wanted to kind of talk about what I think really matters at the start. Basically, listening to music is a lot kind of like drinking fine wine or something like that. When you first try an expensive bottle of wine, you probably don't really understand why it's expensive, or maybe it tastes nicer but you can't describe it. And then if you pursue it and keep on drinking expensive wine, maybe over time your taste buds start to kind of adjust and you begin to understand the flavor profile and all those types of things. Just kind of an acquired taste and also a more sophisticated understanding of something that you've had more experience with. And the same goes for your ears. When you first listen to a nice headphone or a hi-fi audio setup, you might be able to detect that it is better than your earbuds at home, but you might not be able to say why and to what extent and in what ways. It might just not be clear on those very minute points that we get into on this channel usually. What I see a lot of on forums is people, talking about headphones that are hundreds or thousands of dollars, being like, well, this one's great, this one sounds like garbage, or, if you don't use a DAC like this one or this one, then your music's gonna sound literally like nails on a chalkboard, or if you don't have an amp like this, blah, 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 just very extreme statements. And when you're new to this, it's easy to kind of get pulled into that and think, well, I have to have this or else my music's gonna sound terrible. And are these people lying? No, they do genuinely feel that way, but they've been listening to this type of stuff for a lot longer and toying around with it. And so when your ears are kind of untrained, I guess, or they're just not as experienced with all these very specific things, you're not going to notice these differences immediately in all the different kind of factors being thrown around when buying your first pair of headphones. And I think a lot of people who are super into it don't want to admit that. They want to kind of pretend that all of this stuff makes a huge difference to every single person, and the truth of the matter is that it just doesn't. But that's why I feel like some of the things I'm going to say in this might be a little bit controversial, and I'm fine with that. Let's have a discussion in the comments, hopefully not an argument. It's definitely very easy to get people riled up in this stuff for some reason. Audiophile lesson number one, audiophiles are very easy to make mad, but that's fine, it's fine. I don't know, people really do get angry over what someone else's ears hear. I mean, I don't understand, but if you're passionate, I guess. So basically, when you embark on your headphone journey, there's going to be a number of things you're going to run into that are going to be confusing as to whether or not you need to worry about them. And they're all things that eventually you can factor in and that can become, part of your setup and become part of the calculation for when you buy what. But for the first few purchases you make to get into this, it's very overwhelming, and I kind of wanted to go down what's really going to matter and what things you, as a sort of new listener, are going to be able to notice the difference between and should be thinking about when you buy your first pair of headphones. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so the first thing you're gonna have to think about is over-ear versus on-ear headphones. Is this important if it's your first pair? Yes, it is very important. So it's pretty straightforward. Over-ear headphones sit over your ears. On-ear headphones sit on your ears. It's simple as that. Now, over-ear headphones are a lot more popular among audiophiles for a variety of reasons. They are more comfortable. The ear cups that surround your entire ear creates a lot more room for the sound and acoustics to bounce around. And they're generally thought to isolate the sound better too. Of course, they're able to sort of keep the outside noise out a lot better. Whereas on-ear headphones sit directly on your ears. They don't have the ability to block out excess noise as much. They don't have that sort of chamber to create a bigger sound. And they don't always have quite as comfortable of a feel as they are sort of rubbing up against your ears. There are some brands of on-ear headphones like Grado that are super popular among hi-fi listeners. So there's by no means a reason you can't get an on-ear pair of headphones, but the majority of headphones you're going to see in the audio, the luxury audio realm are going to be over-ear headphones, not on-ear. And so that is, pretty much a pretty important distinction to be making, and For the most part, you're probably gonna want an over-ear pair for one of your first pairs, but you can also totally go for an on-ear pair. There just aren't quite as many available sort of from the main brands you're gonna run into. So next is open back versus closed back. As a new listener, is this going to make a difference to you? Yes, it will, a very big one. So closed back headphones are probably every pair of headphones you've owned up until now. They keep all the sound inside the headphones to make sure that when you're studying or taking transit or going around your house, you don't have that awkward bleed that, just makes everything so uncomfortable for everyone around you. And they're also just a more practical type of headphone in general, and just I guess what is out and about in the kind of general consumer market. But in the hi-fi market, there are open back headphones as another option, which do not keep the sound in. You just got a speaker on your ears basically, and there is sound pouring out the backs. There is really no attempt to make them not bleed, so of course there's some practicality sacrifice. But there's of course a reason for this build, which is that they sound a lot wider, a lot more surround sound than a closed back. A closed back headphone is going to feel like the sound is in your head, whereas an open back headphone is going to feel like the sound is surrounding you. Does that mean that an open back headphone is inherently better than a closed back headphone? No, they both stand on their own in different ways. Open back headphones definitely do have a very unique sound to them. They are a very different experience than a closed back, and they're always going to be wider. They're also most optimal for music creation because they kind of mimic the feel of using speakers. But a great pair of closed backs is just as good as a good pair of open backs in many cases. I definitely think that having a pair of open backs in your collection is a great thing to do, and they're really fun headphones that you will enjoy. It's also something to keep in mind that since you're probably used to closed back headphones, an open back headphone may sound really cool. It also might sound a bit odd to you. You might have some time to adjust to it before it really feels maybe comfortable. It can be a bit disconcerting having that super wide sound. I know the first time I used a pair of them, I kept turning down my laptop because I thought that the sound was coming from the speakers on my computer, and that's how wide it sounded. And then I got used to it and I was really into it, but it's a very different experience, It's taking the music from inside your head the way that normal headphones do and literally pulling it around you. So you want to be mindful of that if you want to make that big of a leap into a different kind of format of sound. But yeah, that is definitely something you're going to want to consider for your first pair of headphones. It does not matter if you've never listened to hi-fi headphones or not, you're going to be able to tell a big difference between an open back and a closed back. All right, so next up is IEMs versus just generic run-of-the-mill earbuds. So in-ear monitors, or IEMs, have become almost as big as the actual headphone market, especially in recent years. These were originally targeted at like singers and performers and artists and stuff like that because they have a very snug fit, they're very durable, and they also tend to either have very, very transparent sound signatures, or you can buy them with pretty extreme tunings that allow them to target certain instruments or elements, or just be very good for a certain application. What makes IEMs preferable to earbuds is a couple things. One is that their fit is definitely often more comfortable and a bit more snug in your ears. Second of all, they are larger than earbuds and therefore can just fit a fair amount more technology in a pair of IEMs than you can in a pair of earbuds. And also the companies that make IEMs tend to be a bit more audiophile focused. So IEMs just tend to be where all the newest stuff is at, as opposed to earbuds. You don't see as many of the sort of innovations in audio technology being applied to earbuds as much as you do to IEMs. So IEMs just tend to be more technologically advanced and to have a more intricate kind of sound to them. They're definitely not going to have that sound you're probably used to from a lot of earbuds, which is bass boosted, high-end boosted sort of sound you get from your generic run-of-the-mill earbuds. A lot of IEMs are going to have a bit more of a unique sound to them. They're going to elevate your music. They're definitely going to kind of increase the intensity. So just be aware it's going to get that added edge. It's not going to be such a familiar sound all the time, but that's likely the reason you're getting into hi-fi audio is you are tired of listening to the same kind of tunings you've heard in, just consumer earbuds or whatever. So yeah, IEMs definitely tend to give you a bit more of a elevated perspective of the music that is not always super transparent. And they're maybe not quite as practical as earbuds. They're not always quite as, easy to just shove in your pocket and shove in your ears. They take some adjusting sometimes. You can of course get them in custom fits if you want to spend the money on that, but there's many that come in universal fits now that are very, very comfortable. So yeah, there's a lot to go into on IEMs, but that is the gist of kind of what separates them from earbuds. There are some brands that do make kind of audiophile focused earbuds, such as Strauss & Wagner, which we reviewed on this channel. I'll link to that below. But at large, when it comes to things that go in your ears, the audiophile realm is dominated by IEMs. All right, so here comes the part where I feel like I'm gonna get some not so happy comments, and I am ready for it. Maybe you won't. I mean, honestly, who knows who's gonna watch this, but when it comes to driver type, the type of driver that is going to be in the headphones you buy, there are a bunch of different types of drivers. There's dynamic drivers, balanced armature drivers, electrostatic drivers, and they do all have different modes of action, and they do have effects on the sound of the headphone. They do all have their own sounds to an extent. Do you need to be worried about this when buying your first pair of headphones? You know, should you be going into the tech specs and fretting over whether it's a dynamic or a balanced armature driver? Should you be comparing and contrasting? I mean, if you want to, you totally can. I'm not gonna stop you. But if it's adding to the stress, you know, and making things more complicated, no. You're not gonna notice the difference. You know, your first time listening to HiFi headphones, you are not going to notice the difference between the driver types. In fact, a lot of audiophiles who claim they can notice the difference, they really can't. Yes, the type of driver selected, where they're placed in the frequency spectrum, how many are used, is definitely very important to creating a strong foundation for, you know, the build of a headphone and the sound of a headphone, but many other factors determine the outcome a lot more, such as the tuning and just the general overall build of the headphone and, you know, the quality of the drivers. You know, just because one headphone has a dynamic driver and one headphone has a balanced armature driver, that does not guarantee a certain sound from either one. There's so many other factors going on to change the way that each headphone's going to sound, that the driver type only can do so much to influence it. You're gonna hear people tell you that dynamic drivers have a terrible low-end response, or that balanced armature drivers are way wider and they're way better, or that you need to have this and that. And you know what? Maybe they're right in their own worlds. That's what their ears hear. And over time, as you listen to your headphones and you know, check out other pairs of headphones, you'll start to maybe understand what different drivers sound like, which ones you like better, for what reasons and whatnot. And then at that point, you might want to start factoring that into your decision and your purchases. But for these first few things, as you kind of introduce yourself, don't spend a lot of time worrying about the drivers. It's just gonna drive you crazy, no pun intended, and stress you out. So my suggestion, look at basically any other factor besides the driver type when you're trying to buy your first pair of headphones. It's really not worth too much thought. That's just my opinion. I'm aware that some people will say, oh my God, it makes a huge difference. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying that the difference it makes is not something that people who have not spent a lot of time with this stuff are going to notice very easily off the bat. You know, it could take many months, maybe even a year of listening before that kind of thing starts to really matter. All right, next thing is cable type. Is this something you should be worried about for some of your first purchases? It is not. Once again, you're gonna see people who are gonna tell you, oh my God, the cable that comes with this headphone is garbage, you need to replace it immediately, or if you don't buy this cable, it's gonna be so distorted and this and that, or you know, you need to have this cable for this headphone or else it's gonna completely just ruin it. It's just usually 99% of the time not the case. As long as your cable does not tangle and it is long enough, it should do the job. Yes, a better cable can improve the sound. It can improve, you know, lack of distortion, various different elements. It makes the journey from audio source to headphone smoother. You know, the higher quality the cable is, cables can go well up into the hundreds of dollars for, you know, many reasons, and you can definitely get a really, really nice cable if you want one. That being said, I can almost guarantee you, if this is your first pair of nice headphones, if you go out there and buy a different cable for it, you're not going to be impressed. That being said, if this is your first pair of nice headphones or one of your first pairs, if you go out and buy a really nice cable for it and you plug it in, it's pretty unlikely you're gonna notice a difference. You can convince yourself you do, but you probably won't and you might be disappointed. Now, once again, as you listen to your headphones more, as you get to know them very well, then if one day you switch out the cable after getting to know these headphones, you know, inside and out, you might start to notice what's changing because you are very familiar with how the headphones sound with a different cable. And so then it can be appropriate to try out new cables and to get into that and start to understand what differences they make. But once again, for this kind of introductory period, I don't think it's worth stressing over. You know, move on to it later. save it for another time. I think it's better to buy the best headphone you can afford than to buy the second best headphone you can afford and the quote unquote best cable out there at the moment. All right, so next up is DACs. I am going to be throwing more flames on the fire here of my controversial opinions maybe, but so be it. So DACs are digital audio converters. They are what take the signal from your audio source and convert it into a signal that can be played through your headphones, speakers, what have you. And of course, all phones and computers have a DAC built in, but these DACs are not the top of the line by any means. So on forums, per usual, people are going to tell you if you use the DAC on your iPhone or your MacBook or your computer, the built-in one, it's going to sound like garbage. It's going to waste your headphones. You know, if you don't buy this DAC, it's going to not sound good enough. You know, and how if you buy this DAC, it's going to sound amazing, but this other one sounds terrible, and all these really intense things, and you're going to feel stressed. You're going to be like, oh my God, well, I already have to buy these expensive headphones that I really want, and now I have to buy this DAC for hundreds of more dollars or whatever, and you feel like if you don't get that, then you're not going to get your headphones to sound remotely as good as they should. So, you know, as a beginner, if you buy a DAC, will you notice a difference? Maybe. DACs do improve the sound quality, they do improve the clarity, and it is to an extent a lot of people can notice, but once again, people who have been into this for a long time, these small differences feel a lot bigger to them because of how attuned they are to what they're hearing. If you buy a DAC with your first couple pairs of headphones or whatever, and you do it side by side with and without this DAC you've bought, once again, I see so many things of people being like, I bought this, I'm so disappointed. People said it was gonna totally transform my music. And it might transform your music to your ears at a certain point. But when it's your first time listening to this stuff, you're gonna have trouble detecting what difference it's making, and it's not going to feel very impressive. So can you buy a DAC your first time? Totally. I would recommend getting a affordable one, a not so expensive one if you can. I don't think it's necessary to buy the most expensive one your first go around at all. And if you don't have the money to get a DAC and a pair of headphones, I think that's totally fine. Some people are gonna say that that's not true at all, but your computer DAC will do the job for now. And if you feel like at a certain point you've spent enough time with your headphones that you really get them and you could appreciate the extra cleanliness, appreciate and actually notice the cleanliness a upgraded DAC would bring, then go for it. But for those first couple things, I think you'll be fine. Okay, amplifiers and impedance. Let's talk about those. So headphone amps are quite confusing to a lot of newcomers because their appeal is quite multifaceted. Their main draw is that they increase volume, but then their other qualities are different between each unit and between each person. Gonna hear many different opinions on what an amp is gonna bring to the table, and it's gonna be very confusing. So here's what we know. We know that high impedance headphones need more power, and a lot of them require an amp to get the proper leveling, whereas low impedance headphones typically do not need an amp to be loud enough. I don't really recommend buying a high impedance pair of headphones when you're first getting into this stuff, because then you have really no choice but to buy an amp, and it's gonna be hard to figure out the best amp to pair with it. It's gonna add another layer of confusion. I would just get a low impedance pair so you don't have to worry about an amp off the bat. Once again, you can save your money. Now, if you were to buy an amp, say either to make your headphones louder or because you've heard that it's gonna do something else, will you notice the difference? Yes and no. Will it make the music louder? Of course, it's gonna make your music louder, and you're gonna notice that. It's gonna be very obvious. You're gonna have to turn the volume up way less than you will without it, and that's can be really great, especially if you have a high impedance pair of headphones. However, the other qualities that people buy amps for is how they kind of subtly color the sound, or they add more clarity, kind of similar to how a DAC does, and how they kind of elevate things, and that's where it's gonna become a lot more of a gray area that you, as someone who's new to this, are going to get very confused by and maybe a bit disappointed by. Amps are a super nuanced thing in how they affect sound outside of their volume adjustments, and they're also usually sold in tandem with a DAC. So most devices you're gonna see are going to be an amp/DAC, so you don't even really know which part is adding that extra clarity, whether it's the amp or the DAC. But either way, I think that it's probably going to make a difference, of course, down the road, and it's going to be a difference you can appreciate, but I don't think it's something you need to be worried about if you don't have high impedance headphones right this minute. I think that you can hold off on buying an amp for now and just enjoy your headphones, and then once you have the money, go ahead and go for it. If you are interested in an amp, There are some amps that have some sort of sound modulation functions like bass boosts and, sound widening features, and those can be fun to buy, to get some variation to play around with, and totally those are going to be differences you will notice. Check out like the HiFi Zen DAC. I did a review on that, I'll link below, or the HiFi X Cam, which has some different sort of 3D sound features. Those are things that anyone will be able to notice. And if you want a super affordable amp slash DAC and also super small one, check out the HiFi Hip DAC or the Quest Style M12, which I also did a review on, and I will link to that, of course, below too. Okay, so next let's talk about money, as in headphone price. This is probably one of the things that you are most curious about, like what does a $2,000 pair of headphones sound like? There's so many different headphone prices and they vary so much and it gets very confusing. So I'm gonna do my best to explain what I feel the price of headphone means. So prices do make a difference, but it works in plateaus. So a $200 and $300 headphone to a lot of people, especially someone new to this, are going to sound very similar in quality a lot of the time, and they might even sound close in quality to a $500 pair of headphones. Will a $300 pair of headphones sound as good as a $700 to $1,000 pair of headphones? Probably not. Will it sound, $500 to $700 worse? No. It doesn't quite work that way. So of course, right now we have the most advanced sound technology, ever available to us, and that is used in a lot of these very expensive headphones. But to achieve even just a small improvement in sound, it takes some very complicated engineering of all kinds of different types. So to sort of implement something into a headphone that can improve the sound by a somewhat small margin may require a price bump that is not such a small margin. And of course, in the audio world, people do really value these increases, however incremental they are, and that's why people shell out the cash for these really nice headphones. You keep kind of going up and up and up and up and up, but you're not going to get a headphone generally that sounds 5 times better for 5 times the price. It doesn't always work that way. Of course, it'd be great if it did, but what it tends to be is that it just is a matter of the technology being used to make it, the best it can be, but there are limits to how great sound can be at this point. And also at the end of the day, the recordings themselves can only be pushed so far. Once again, if this is your first pair of headphones, you don't really need to spend a ton of money, because even though if you hear a really expensive pair, you'll probably be able to tell it's more expensive, at least I'd hope so. For the sake of the headphone company, but if you, even if you can tell that they're more expensive, you might not really fully feel like they're worth it, because you don't have, it sounds so elitist, you don't have the ears yet. I don't mean it that way, like nobody does naturally, it takes a lot of time, but you're gonna appreciate that purchase that, maybe kills your wallet a lot more. It's gonna feel a lot more worth it once you've had time to really appreciate your headphones at a lower price point and understand them. It's gonna start to make the more expensive ones feel maybe more valuable than they feel when you first get into this. Price can also be a matter of specificity. You'll find that headphones in lower price ranges, they can have very unique sounds to them, but they may follow more familiar sound patterns. They might not have the most unique sounds to them, whereas when we get up into the higher prices, you might find headphones that have more unique quirks and kind of individualistic characters to them. So if you have a very particular taste in sound, maybe you want super booming bass and like an insanely intense attack, then it might cost a bit of money to get a headphone that does that very particular thing and does it without sacrificing quality. But as you're starting out, don't sweat it if you can't afford the nicest pair of headphones out there, and don't listen to people that tell you that these cheap ones sound like garbage. They don't. And you'll start to understand that as you get into this. Don't get looped into the elitism of high-priced headphones. It's great if you can afford a pair, and by all means save up your money for it if you decide you want that, but do not sweat it if you don't have a high budget. You can still get great sound. This is 2021. It's very possible to do on a low budget. So next up is file type. What type of files are you listening to? This is another very heated topic. Believe it or not, people do get heated over bit rates and things like that. Even though it's like, just listen to whatever you want, just tell us how you feel about it. I don't know. But either way, somebody is watching this and they've made it this far in the video and they're just fuming. I'm going to talk about my opinion of file types, whether it's agreed upon or not, and what I think they mean to somebody who is not experienced with audio and is getting started in it. So streaming services like Tidal have kind of helped incite this pickiness among listeners about file types, by offering FLAC and MQA and other high quality audiophiles that, you know, allegedly sound audibly better. And will there be a noticeable difference between like a 128 kilobit per second YouTube to MP3 file and a MQA file? Yes, even to somebody who does not know what they're talking about, you're gonna probably notice the difference. But add just a little bit more fidelity, you know, make that into a 320 kilobit per second file and try to compare it to an MQA file. Some people will hear a difference. You are probably not that person if you're new to this. In fact, a lot of people who are not so new to this, who claim to hear the difference, probably couldn't. If you're humble enough, you know, do a 320 kilobit per second MP3 next to an MQA file side by side, blindfolded, you know, and see how many you get right. Yes, you have a 50-50 chance every time, but you're gonna notice that most of the time it's kind of a shot in the dark for which is which. Yes, you can definitely train your ears to the point that you will be able to hear the difference, but it is really difficult. I'm probably making some people so angry right now. If you hear the difference between MQA, that's fine, that's great, and I totally kind of hear it on some songs, on some occasions. And I think that it's like, you know, why not? Like if it makes a difference that maybe you don't even notice consciously, you might as well just use it. But if you're new to this, if you want to listen to your 320 kilobit per second MP3s, your 256 kilobit per second MP3s, you will be fine. You will not be, you know, listening to garbage quality. It's gonna sound just fine. And if you upgrade to WAV or FLAC files, yes, you will maybe learn to tell the difference, but it's gonna take a pretty long time to really be able to notice it. And that means that you shouldn't sweat, you know, having the perfect audio quality all the time right off the bat. It'll be fine. All right, so the last thing is Bluetooth versus wired. This is definitely a not as hot as it used to be topic, I guess, among the audio community, because Bluetooth has just been totally loathed by audiophiles for years. Only recently has it started to gain any credibility in like the hi-fi kind of realm. The thing about Bluetooth is that no matter how, you know, great the recording is or great the headphones are, they just can't translate audio at the same quality that a wire can. They have to convert it into these codecs in order to get it wirelessly to your headphones. Now these codecs are getting rapidly better and better. There's more and more available as time goes on, but it's not quite the availability that's offered with a wired pair of headphones. And there can be a noticeable degradation of quality in music with Bluetooth earbuds. What is more noticeable is the volume. It is not going to be as loud with a pair of Bluetooth earbuds. You're often going to have to push the volume a bit more. And especially if you listen to sort of older, quieter recordings, some Bluetooth earbuds and headphones may just not be loud enough for you. If you're not a volume pusher, then maybe it'll be fine, but that is a thing that you will notice. In terms of the degradation of quality from Bluetooth earbuds, once again, if you're new to this, I don't think you're gonna notice it. But over time, you might. But at first, I don't think you will. Maybe it's a hot take. There are some, earbuds that have really gotten a lot of traction, like the Bowers & Wilkins PI7. I did a video on that, which I will link below. The Sennheiser Momentum 2, the Noble Audio Falcon Pro. These are all Bluetooth earbuds that have been kind of given some seals of approval by certain parts of the community. And definitely are worth checking out. And companies like HiFi Man have released wireless versions of some of their headphones. You can definitely go for a pair of Bluetooth headphones and they might sound amazing and be great. If you have a collection, it's unlikely that your Bluetooth headphones are going to be like the holy grail best headphone of your collection, but they definitely can get the job done. There just are some drawbacks on the volume and some drawbacks on the quality that you may start to notice over time. All right, so hopefully that helped you narrow down your options a little bit, but you're probably still like, all right, so how do I choose a pair of headphones? And it's definitely confusing, and it's pretty hard to find places to try on a lot of these headphones, especially, some of these nicer ones are not going to be available at your local Best Buy or anything like that. And the truth of the matter is that no matter what, if you order headphones online without trying them first, it's always going to be a roll of the dice. It does not matter how many reviews you read, how many reviews you watch. There's always going to be an element of it that is going to be a surprise. And for some people that's exciting, for other people that's stressful. Totally get it. I can say that to help minimize your chances of hating your headphones, well, first of all, buy somewhere with a return policy if you can. For one of your first pairs though, try to buy a pair that is pretty popular maybe among the audio world, and it's from a company with a long-standing reputation. This way, you kind of just know that it's already an all-around liked and respected headphone. So for example, Sennheiser HD660S, HiFi Man Ananda, Beyerdynamic DT1990 Pro, these are all headphones that are pretty widely well-liked. There's always going to be some naysayers, but these are all very popular headphones that you're much less likely to have major issues with than one that maybe has not gotten a lot of buzz or feedback already. Those are all a bit more on the expensive side though, and like I said earlier, I would recommend starting with a lower price unless you don't want to, in which case go for it. If you want to start in that like $150 to $300 range, I would once again try to buy a more popular model because it might be mentioned in more comparisons and reviews and message boards. Post in a message board to ask, how does this headphone I have that a bunch of other people on the forum probably also have, then you're going to get more feedback. So headphones like Beyerdynamic DT770, DT990 Pro, HiFi Man Sandara, Sennheiser HD560S, things like that are definitely going to be more relevant in different conversations you have, from major companies, really just anything from a major manufacturer. It's going to be a lot easier to research if you decide, okay, I like this headphone, but I want something that has more bass or that's brighter, etc. Any sort of qualm you have, there's definitely a headphone out there that has you covered and fixes that issue or, somehow improves upon it. So yeah, definitely would say to go for a kind of long-standing popular brand and something that you can definitely discuss and compare easily online. In terms of starter IEMs, I'd recommend like Final Audio A4000, Meze RAI Solo, Sennheiser IE300. Those are all in a relatively affordable-ish price range and are once again very popular and often discussed. So yeah, those are my words of wisdom for getting into hi-fi audio. I'm not saying that everything here is the undeniable truth. These are all my opinions. I'm just sharing what I think, a pair of very naive ears are going to appreciate when buying a pair of headphones, and some things I think are not easily appreciated off the bat. In many ways, it's a blessing to not be super picky about this stuff, to not feel like if you don't use X or Y DAC that music sounds horrible. But it's also fun to, be very nitpicky and be very critical. That's why a lot of people like to get into this, is to have discussions and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, totally. Train your ears, get adjusted, spend time, learn, and then you can be one of these people who goes and yells about how MQA sounds a million times better and MP3 is terrible and how dare you and all those things. Yeah, I wish you the best of luck on your quest to enter the audio realm. Please feel free to leave me comments if you have any more questions, whether you're a beginner or not. I'd be happy to talk about it and answer and whatnot. I'll also link to Major Hi-Fi's IEM, headphone, and true wireless ranking tools. These are great for also helping narrow down your options. You can compare headphones to basically anything on the market right now, so definitely check that out if you're new to any of this. So yeah, best of luck to all my, newcomers, and if you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button. I'd love for you to keep watching my videos if you enjoyed this one. So yeah, I'll be back soon with some more videos and reviews, and until next time, happy listening.